We go now to Democratic Senator Chris Coons, who joins us from Wilmington, Delaware. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning, Margaret. Great to be on with you again.
Thank you. As you know, there are ongoing talks about changing not just border security funding, but also policy. And from what we are reporting, those two elements in particular, raising the credible fear standard on asylum and expanding detention and deportation efforts, some in the Democratic caucus are objecting. Are you okay with it?
Well, I need to know the final deals, but I am likely to support this. I have spoken with a number of the negotiators. They have been working hard this weekend. I am hopeful that we can reach a conclusion this coming week. Margaret, for us to fail to come together and support Ukraine in their ongoing fight for freedom against Russian aggression would be a huge gift to Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and Hamas. There's a lot of other things in this funding package that I strongly support. Interdicting fentanyl at our border, strengthening border security, humanitarian relief, aid to our Indo-Pacific partners, support for Israel. So frankly, if we can come together on a border security deal that gets bipartisan support, I will support it.
But some of your fellow Democrats, like Bob Menendez, have said it's shameful and selling out migrants and asylum seekers. Why is he wrong?
I understand Senator Menendez's passion on the part of making sure that our immigration system is safe, legal, and humane. But as I've often said in talking about the campaign for 24, President Biden needs to be compared not to the almighty, not to a perfect alternative, but to the actual alternative. And you just played for Congressman Gonzalez the stunning, hateful, fascist rhetoric of former President Trump when he's talking about poisoning the blood of our nation. The former president would bring in place not these modest changes to asylum policy, but radical and dramatic changes to immigration policy. We need to take seriously that there is a border security crisis, and we need to take responsible steps that reflect our values.
And that requires more conversation to be had on the other side of this break, so please stay with us. We'll have more with Senator Coons. Welcome back to Face the Nation. Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons is back with us. Senator, I want to pick up where we left off. We're talking about some potentially tough votes that will have to be taken in the near term with the border, with Ukraine, with Israel and Taiwan, all of those bundled together. Was it a strategic mistake for the White House to suggest bundling all of those as the president did in that Oval Office address when he asked for this big national security supplemental?
No, Margaret, I think we're at a moment where all around the world, our partners and allies need to see that we are strong. President Biden's done a remarkable job of pulling together a global coalition of 50 countries who in combination have contributed more to Ukraine's defense than we have, and making sure that we're pushing back on China and their predatory actions in the Indo-Pacific is a key part of our national security. That there's also humanitarian relief in this package, critical to address the hunger that's been caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and to come to the aid of Israel, and to provide critically needed support for innocent Palestinians in Gaza. To put all of this into one package recognizes that it's urgent that we provide a signal to the world that we are still a reliable ally and partner.
Specific to Israel, there was a pretty strong signal sent last night by Prime Minister Netanyahu when he answered questions from reporters. And he said he's, quote, proud he prevented the establishment of a Palestinian state, and he took credit for putting the brakes on the peace process. He seemed to be referring to President Biden's vision for a revamped Palestinian Authority when he said, among friends, it's important not to foster illusions. That seems to be casting the president's vision as diluted. Is that acceptable from an ally who's asking for billions of dollars in aid?
Prime Minister Netanyahu has been an exceptionally difficult partner. And I think President Biden did the right thing right after the horrific attack by Hamas, to go to Israel, to stand strong with Israel, and frankly, to send a firm message to Iran to stay out of this conflict. He deployed 2 aircraft carrier battle groups to the region. so that Israel could focus on its self-defense against Hamas and not face an open attack from Hezbollah on the north or Houthis on the south, or Iranian forces up on the Golan Heights. What has been a real challenge is the big gap between most of us in Congress and the president, who believe a two-state solution is the only way forward, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has done everything he can to undermine a positive vision for peace for Israel.
So you have leverage here, though, policy-wise. I mean, the president has been very vocal in defending the prime minister and his choices. But President Biden did say the bombing is indiscriminate. The U.S. provides billions of dollars, like $3 billion or more a year. We're looking at another 10. Can't you put in some kind of provision here to force adherence to international law or U.S. law, as Senator Van Hollen is proposing?
Margaret, there already are requirements in American law that when we send military assistance to another country, whether it's Ukraine or it's Israel, that they have to abide by international law. And President Biden and the senior members of his team who've gone to Israel repeatedly have had some success in pressing Prime Minister Netanyahu to change direction, most recently in reining in settler violence in the West Bank. Because of elements of Netanyahu's cabinet, folks like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, that's been difficult for Netanyahu to do, but we have imposed sanctions on those who are fomenting settler violence, and President Biden has successfully pressed to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza and a reduction in settler violence. This is a difficult, challenging moment. And I know you're going to move on to some positive news about our economy, about other things we're getting done in Washington. But I am so grateful that in this moment, a seasoned and capable leader like President Biden is the one at the helm in the midst of all these challenging crises in our world.
And we should mention, you are a Biden surrogate for the campaign, sir. So on that note, we are going to leave it there because we have to turn to the war in Gaza. And our Rami Inocencio, who has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Chasing a UN aid truck that had just crossed in from Egypt this morning, hundreds of desperate Gazans ransacked it and ran off with boxes. This morning, too, a breakthrough in aid. Israel will now allow UN trucks to drive directly into Gaza from the Kerem Shalom crossing, while Israel's military pressed ahead with its bombardment across the 25-mile strip.
They are without water, without food, and there is a sniper inside the compound.
A UK member of parliament said an Israeli sniper has pinned down her Christian family and more than 50 disabled people in Gaza's only Roman Catholic church.
There's a woman and her daughter who have been killed.
Nearby at northern Gaza's last functioning hospital, withdrawing tanks and troops left behind devastation. We don't have houses or relatives anymore, said this woman. Where should we go? While in the south, in Khan Yunis, medics say dozens of dead killed by airstrikes arrived at Nasser Hospital over the weekend. Outside, dozens of mourners buried another journalist. Samar Abu Daqqa worked for Al Jazeera television. At least 64 journalists have reportedly been killed in this war so far. And in the West Bank, Israeli soldiers shot and killed 5 Palestinians over the weekend, with nearly 300 killed since October 7th, says the Palestinian Health Ministry. Overnight, in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square, thousands demanded their government make a deal with Hamas, akshav in Hebrew, meaning now.
And put the best offer on the table to get the hostages back alive. Alive.
I don't imagine it can be any more urgent than it has been before.
Are you angry?
My anger only aims towards my government.
But after admitting its own troops killed 3 hostages in Gaza Friday, pressure has hit a new high against the prime minister to get the hostages still alive home. We are working with Qatar and Egypt, said Benjamin Netanyahu late Saturday in his first acknowledgement that Qatar's prime minister, Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, met Israel's spy chief, David Barnea, in France Friday. 2 days after Israel's war cabinet reportedly denied his offer to restart talks. And here at Hostage Square, we are learning of more international calls for a ceasefire coming from the foreign ministers of the United Kingdom and Germany, which is a major policy shift. And adding to the pressure, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is expected to arrive here tomorrow.
It's Remy Inocencio reporting from Israel. Our producer Marwan Al-Ghul has the latest on the devastation in Gaza.
Good morning. I am here at this point between Rafah and Khan Younis city behind me. I can hear fire exchange and bombing on this city, which is the main target for the Israeli troops. In the other direction, Rafah still have receiving more and more fled people from Khan Younis city and in the north of Gaza Strip. This city, it's crowded of millions of new displaced people in this city. If I want to talk about journalists were gathering near Kuwaiti hospitals. They fixed some tents for them and for their families.
They're not even tents. I mean, they're just some plastic and some pieces of wood that we put together, trying to create what looks like it and something to protect us from the cold, even though they don't.
2 days ago, the press family lost one of the most well-known cameraman, Samer Abu Dakka from Al Jazeera news channel. Here I'm again hearing bombing in Khan Younis city behind me.
Marwan Al-Ghul reporting from Gaza, where he lives. Our Leslie Stahl spoke with Yarden Roman Gat, one of the Israelis taken hostage during the Hamas attacks on October 7th and held for nearly 2 months, for tonight's 60 Minutes.
As a woman, the fear of getting raped or the variety of the
things
the
that
act
could,
could never get off your mind. Never. It's just not an option, because as long as you're there, you're hopeless. You have no protection. You cannot object to anything. It could cost you your life. And that fear was not as extreme the whole time, but it will never go away. It's always there.
For more of their conversation, tune in to 60 Minutes tonight after football. We'll be back in a moment. Now to the economy and some good news. The Federal Reserve predicts slowing inflation could lead it to make 3 interest rate cuts next year, which means borrowing costs for mortgages and auto loans could be lowered. It also predicted inflation will fall to 2.2%, a rate pretty close to meeting the Fed's target. With more, we're joined now by Austan Goolsbee, the president and CEO of the Chicago Federal Reserve. Good to have you here.
Great to see you, Margaret.
Or down the line, I should say. You were one of the people who voted to keep rates where they are at this 22-year high. What's going to drive the decision of when to cut and by how much?
Well, what should drive the decision, in my view, about monetary policy is, are we meeting the job that the Federal Reserve Act gives us, which is to say maximizing employment and stabilizing prices. That's what we call the dual mandate, that there's 2 sides to it. And over the last several years, the United States has done very well on the employment front and pretty badly on the inflation side. What will determine what we should do with rates is, can we get the inflation back down to target? And we made a lot of progress in 2023, but I still caution everybody, it's not done. And so the data is going to drive what's going to happen to rates.
It's not done, you say, but you said back in November the economy was on a golden path. That sounded like that.
I said it could be.
It could be.
And,
okay.
And I still think we could.
So. Yeah. Okay, so it is still possible to have a soft landing. In other words, to avoid that recession so many had feared. So it's still too early to declare victory.
Yeah, for sure, it's too early to declare victory. We made a lot of progress. So the thing to remember is, every time in the past that the Fed or other central banks around the world have had to get inflation down a lot, it has basically always been accompanied by a major recession. In 2023, we still get one more month of data, but 2023 looks like it's going to end up being a very substantial reduction in inflation without a big increase in the unemployment rate. That's the golden path that I talked about. But we're still above the target. We got to get inflation down to target before, until we're convinced that we're on path to that. It's an overstatement to be counting the chickens.
Okay, so you're good news, but you're cautious in that assessment.
Nice.
Yeah,
yes.
one of
good news, but cautious.
Yeah, one of the things though that came out that was not a positive statistic. The federal government said on Friday that homelessness in the United States increased 12% year over year. They pinned that as being driven by soaring rent costs and the end of pandemic assistance. How do you weigh a data point like that?
Well, that's a concerning data point, and we've got other concerning data points for sure. You see delinquencies going up for both credit card debt, auto lending, and small business lending. We've got to take the economy in a totality. We have a straightforward mandate, like I say, which is maximize employment and stabilize prices. We just got to keep taking readings of the economy as we go along and I think decide meeting to meeting in a data-dependent way.
What are your thoughts about the degree to which we need to be concerned about geopolitical risk? You still have this war in Ukraine. You still have instability in the Middle East beyond Israel, now potentially impacting shipping through major ports in the Middle East. How do you weigh that degree of risk to the outlook that you have?
It's definitely a degree of risk. In some sense, part of the job of a central banker is to be worried about everything.
Right.
Paul Volcker, my old friend and mentor, used to say that there was no silver lining that he could find that was bright enough that he could not find a dark cloud that would be big enough to block it out. So if oil prices were to start rising substantially again, the way they have in the last few years, that would be a major supply shock problem facing the economy. If we saw expansions of wars, if we saw a collapse in China, if we saw a series of things around the world, or if we got big credit crunch in the United States and deterioration of the banking sector, all of those would be threats. And those kind of external shocks, we call them, they have derailed easier soft landings than this in the past, in 1990 and 2001. So we just got to monitor those, and it's the old Midwest way. You know, there is no bad weather. There is only bad clothing. We prepare and we take the conditions as they come.
Austan Goolsbee, thank you for giving us your perspective. We'll be back in a moment.
Thank you, Margaret.
With time running out on any additional aid for Ukraine from Congress this year, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made a last-minute visit to Washington last week to make his case for more support for the fight against Russia. Oksana Markarova is Ukraine's ambassador to the United States and is back with us. Good morning to you, Ambassador.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
President Biden said Congress is about to give Vladimir Putin the best Christmas present he could get. How urgent is it that this funding be approved this year?
Well, time is of the essence, and time is already running out because, as you know, we already do not have any programs of support except for some presidential drawdown package, but nothing in the budget support, nothing in humanitarian or energy support. It's great that we have prepared thanks to the big support from the US, and you see already all these attacks on Kyiv, on other places in Ukraine. They're very similar to last year, but this year they were not able to cause blackouts for a long time. And that's all because we together worked so much and because American people helped us to prepare for this. And it's so much cheaper to prevent it rather than repair it. But we really are counting on our friends and partners here. And, I believe in Christmas miracles. I really hope that, this Christmas will show that we, all civilized people, all people who believe in freedom, that we can stay the course much better than autocrats because they are uniting.
The White House says there's about $1 billion left. And then you mentioned drawdown, that's $4.6 billion. But they've indicated they don't want to get into that because it could impact U.S. military readiness. Would they? Do you know?
Well, first of all, the reason why we really need all three programs, even for the defense assistance, like USAA, a specific program for Ukraine, and foreign military sales, because there is a lot that we were buying, the US was buying from American producers here in the US, like drones and rockets and interceptors for the air defense. And I can go on, and you cannot take it using the drawdown. You need to go to industrial base in order for them to produce it. So yes, we do have this drawdown authority, and we are trying together with your military to find whatever is there to still be used and not go below your critical readiness, but it's tough. So we really, all the eyes are on Congress now, and we really hope that this progress that we hear about, and they will be able to find a solution. And look, as the former Minister of Finance, I negotiated many budgets with my parliament. I understand the importance of the local priorities, and I understand how important the border discussions are. We can just only pray and hope that there will be a result there, and that the deal that they will be able to reach will allow the fast decisions also on the support to Ukraine.
Well, as you mentioned, the border and the lack of an agreement is holding up everything else, because the idea is to package the border with Ukraine aid. During the visit to the United States by your president this past week, he did give an interview to Fox News, and he spoke about his meeting with Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And President Zelensky said, decision in December, decision in January, decision in February. The big difference is it's not about financing, it's about the morality. Republicans heard your president say that and are now arguing he was telling us it's not all that urgent. We have a few more months. Are they misinterpreting your president?
No, I think the president has been very direct and very open in all the meetings, from president to vice president to Senate to speaker, describing how difficult the fight is, how many combat operations we have on a daily basis, every day, including today, on how many drone attacks and other attacks, missile attacks on Ukraine we have. 34 Shahid drones yesterday, just already 7 today. He also said that the time was of the essence, and he mentioned all the results that we were able to achieve, not only in 2002 on the ground, but also in 2003 in the Black Sea. But he was very clear that we need to stay the course and that we need money and support and especially the security assistance, and we need it in October, November. So, no, he was very clear. But of course, we cannot get into the internal situation. We cannot tell people what to do. We can only ask Americans to continue supporting us. So time is important.
So the White House says there's not a stalemate in Ukraine. And the White House declassified intelligence saying Russia lost 87% of their military personnel to injury or death since this war began. Those are measured as successes. But as you know, Ukraine's military hasn't made the gains that the U.S. had been hoping for on the battlefield. How do you change the trajectory?
Well, in effect, we have. So to be able to hold such a large landline and not allow Russians to take any of our villages, and also have the progress on the now left bank also of Dnipro, is already a huge success, comparing our armed forces, comparing the capabilities. Now, we had a lot of success in the Black Sea. And I think that's what a lot of people overlook, that since June and July, when the summer campaign started, we were sitting here with you discussing how we were praying for Russia not to pull out from the grain corridor so that we can use it. And we were completely at the mercy of them. We don't even need to ask them now. We have the grain corridor because we have degraded their fleet so much. We got them all the way to their own ports from the Crimean ports, and it's a huge counter progress in the counteroffensive.
We will continue to watch that. Ambassador, thank you for being here. We'll be right back. That's it for us today. Thank you for watching. Until next week. For Face the Nation, I'm Margaret Brennan.